your coffee break with me. Come and take your coffee break with me. Come and take your coffee. Come and take your coffee. Come and take your coffee break with me.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. I'm joined today by my co-host, Candice Bellamy. Candice, thank you for being here today. I'm so glad we're actually doing a show together.
I know, this is so great. Thanks for having me. So this is going to be so much fun. I can feel it. Even got my mug out for the occasion.
I love it, and I can see the coffee break picture in the background. But we're here today to make a bit of an announcement. I'll start it, and then you and I can, we can talk about it. But the show is going to be transitioning to the Merino show. And so that's what the show will be after this point moving forward. But that is because, Candice, you have a lot of exciting projects of your own that are coming up, and you just need that time, right? Do you want to talk a little about just kind of what had you arrive to that decision and sort of taking a step away from the show? Because I know you have a lot going on.
Well, first of all, I'm completely shocked to hear this news live. I wish someone had, just kidding.
I do not want people to think that I came and took over the show. I have to say this because really from the bottom of my heart, and you know this because we've talked, but you and I met over a year ago, last February, when I was still working for the city of Buda as their communications director, and it was Black History Month. And I sought you out to do a profile piece as one of our Black History Month pieces because I had seen your singing. You had done an event in Buda, and I saw that. Then I found out you were a doctor. I found out you were a documentary filmmaker. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to interview her. And that's how we met. We did that story together. And this is just for the public if they don't know this. When I left the city of Buda to take another job, you reached out to me to join you on the show that you had created for Awesome Music TV, Coffee Break with Candice. And the fact that you did that, sharing that spotlight, was meant so much to me because you and I had talked in that interview that we had in Buda. And I had told you, I'm really not sure what I want to do. I sort of want to branch out and do stuff outside of work that kind of is in line with hosting. And so I want to say, just for people who didn't know that, that's how this all came about in the first place. So thank you for that, because I don't know that I would have had the courage to step out and do that on my own. I really wouldn't have, because you kind of pushed me in a good way to do it. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're so welcome. And I feel as if, what you said that day, we sort of talked off camera and I asked you some questions. And one of the things you said you wanted to do was, tell positive stories. And that resonated with me. And I thought, he would be a great person to co-host with. And that's what made me reach out to you and then start this process. And I think it's been great. And I have loved, when I'm not doing a show, I love watching your episodes and I love the stories that you are sharing. And they, there's a wide range, which I think is what is so great about it as well. And so, this has been so exciting to work with you, and you're going to be great on your own. The new show is going to be, amazing. And I look forward to watching it going forward. But as you mentioned, I do have a lot going on right now. I still work full time as a medical doctor. And then I just finished filming my documentary Healer on Dr. Elders, the first African-American Surgeon General of the United States. And that's been a labor of love. It's been intense. And so, and a joy. She's an amazing woman. And to see that courage, she's incredible. She's brilliant. So to have that opportunity, how often in your lifetime do you get to meet someone that you admire, that's at a, been at a totally different level, than I'm likely to ever be? That in and of itself didn't even seem possible. And then not only to meet her, but to, get to spend time with her family as well. She's so down to earth. and you go to her house, you get a meal. I mean, she's a Southern woman, and I relate to that. I connect with that because I'm from the South. So it's just been this incredible journey, and I feel really blessed and honored to have had the opportunity, to spend time with her and to film, and now, finish up this documentary. So that's a big project that I'll be working on in the coming months. And then I get to do something that I love, which is, continue making music, but I also get to reprise my role as Roberta Flack in the upcoming musical, The Voices of Donny Hathaway. So we did the show originally in 2018, and Robert has since moved to Atlanta and is doing some amazing work there. But a theater here in Austin wanted him to bring the show back. And so he asked me to be Roberta. How could I say no? Like, she's one of my favorite artists of all time, and get to wear a huge, fro and some 70s bobbing clothes and float, on the stage. So, for me, that's just, the ultimate. So I'm really looking forward to that as well. So lots going on.
Yeah, that's amazing. I was going to say, just talking about the Roberta Flack show, I saw some of your pictures on your Facebook of you when you did the show before, and they were so beautiful. And I'm excited because I'm going to go see it. I'm going to go see you in that show. Like, I'm so excited to see you in your element, because I know that music is a huge part of your life. Before we get into that, I want to go back to Dr. Elders, because you and I have talked a lot about this documentary that you're working on, and it's been really a labor of love for you. And you've been working on it tirelessly for a while, right? And now
it's 2018, yes.
Yeah, the shooting is done, and now it goes into the editing process. What are your hopes for that project? Now that you're kind of in, I won't say the final stretch, because I know there's still work to be done, and editing is a long process. Anybody who's in film knows that. But you have a lot that you have to kind of go through. So what's the next step? What's the process in getting this out there so everybody can see it?
Well, so, at this juncture for me, what I'm doing now is going through the footage and creating a mega cut. So I'm trying to remove anything that I know we wouldn't use in the edit. And then anything that's a strong quote or, visually is interesting, I'm putting all that together on a timeline so that then I can hand that over to an editor, to have the final edit. I hope this film, more than anything, like, there's one major thing is I hope it honors her in a way that she is really proud of it. There's something to be said for creating a work of fiction where you can be as creative and maybe, not as accurate, because you're not really telling, a true story, or maybe it's based on a true story, but you still have liberties. And I want to honor her story and be as, as real as possible. So that is really important to me. I want her to love it. And the second thing is I want to create offshoots of this film. So I'm going to do a feature, so roughly 55 minutes. It would be a dream for it to be on PBS, and it would be a dream for it to go, not only or be available not only in the United States, but around the world, so that her story is heard, her voice is heard. And then I would love to create a shorter version as an educational piece, so that young kids have something to aspire to, and see a woman who came from such humble beginnings, who was able to rise to the highest medical position in the nation. And so that's what I would love to see for this film. And I'm excited and look forward to, working towards those goals.
Now, prior to this, had you ever done a film before, or is this the first time that you've, been in this process of making a film? And if so, what was the inspiration behind that? Aside from the fact that, Dr. Elders is someone to be respected, and there's so much of a story there about her. But for you, when did that light go off in your head where you thought, I'm going to do this? Because that's an ambitious, it's an ambitious project. That would be overwhelming for a lot of people.
Well, and you know what? That's the great thing about me. I sometimes I forge ahead, and then I go, oh, wow, this is a lot. So, and, but growing up, I had a mother who encouraged me and told me I could do and be anything. And I really believed her. And so I think when in 2012, for me, professionally, there were some things occurring in terms of, is what I'm doing worth it? Does it matter? Does it have value? And what I did is I started researching women in medicine, pioneers, African-American women in medicine. And I came across, several, physicians, and I started researching, started doing some interviews. And then I thought, okay, well, there's probably someone else more qualified than me to do this film. So if I wait a little while, someone else will take up, the baton and run with it. And it didn't happen. And I did a seminar probably in 2017, or it was about filmmaking. And it was a friend of mine that was actually doing it. He's out in LA and he's very, very successful, doing well. But he asked me about the documentary. He said, why aren't you doing it? And I couldn't give him a good answer. And so, I resumed the project in 2018 and was able to connect with Dr. Elders. And once I met with her and spoke with her, I just knew that I wanted the film to focus on her. And so, that's kind of the long answer, is that it really started 2012, 2013. I took a break. And honestly, during that time, I did some film classes and different things too. So, I thought, well, ultimately I may, but somebody else might pick it up and do it better. And it just didn't happen. And at that point, I'd had some experiences, and I thought, well, I'm just going to keep going with it. So it was my first feature. I've done music videos and produced on those. And then, I just recently directed your intro for your new show, which was just a blast, And so what I've learned from all this is there's so many, moving parts when it comes to film. There's the producing, there's the directing, there's a lot of things happening. And I've done a lot of those roles on my film. And so I know with the next project I do after this one, because I really want to do more in the documentary arena, that, I will not only have respect for the people I hire, but really understand, how much they're bringing to the table. And so, which is really cool too. So it's definitely been a learning experience. But at the same time, I've had the time of my life.
Well, I can't wait until, that project is finished and, we can all see it. I know it's going to be great. And as you said, it feels like it's sort of lit a fire under you that moving forward, this isn't going to be the end. This is the beginning of a new chapter when it comes to documentary filmmaking for you and being involved in that process, right?
Absolutely. I didn't realize too, David, I've definitely been in front of the camera, as you have, not only with this show, but with other things you've done. And, it's fun. It's fun being in front of the camera. But what I didn't realize is how interesting and how intricate, the process is behind the camera. How many things need to happen right for things to go well, and how one thing can go wrong and kind of mess things up. And that was sort of, it's fun because I enjoy the challenge of it all. It also feels really good when I see all the things I'm doing sort of come together behind the camera. And I love storytelling. That's the other aspect of it. And so, with the Dr. Elders project, one of the highlights for me was the, opportunity to go to a cotton field and shoot an opening scene for the film with a young actress that we cast as young Dr. Elders. And so the great thing about that was I had worked with another filmmaker and told her about the idea. And I thought, well, it's a documentary, so should I even do that? And she's like, that would be great, actually. And so, not only the work I'm doing, but the relationships I've built and the story I'm getting to develop with this Dr. Elders project, it just lit a fire under me. And I thought, yeah, this won't be your last. You've got some other things you want to do. I mean, I'd love to do a 6-part series on current women in medicine. I already have some ideas of what that looks like because some of the women doctors I know. So I'd love to do that. And then I have a couple ideas of some other projects I'd like to work on. And I think it's important for me as an African-American woman to tell stories about African-American, people in our history. And so that's one thing that's really important to me as well.
And I have to say, you mentioned earlier, we'll talk about it more later when we premiere it. We're going to premiere the intro to my new show later on. But I have to say, like, when you and I were in the process of, and and I'll get more into that later, just on, me being the anxiety, nervous person that I am. But you were like so calming. And what I saw, you really loved, like you were mentioning earlier, and it was so evident at the shoot, the behind the scenes, watching all of the parts come together and being
Yes.
so on target with everything. Like, because I'm pretty, when you know how I am with projects, I'm really like, let's get it done. And you're the same way. But it was so like, David, I need this by this date. I need your kind of opening, like your dance, what you want to do. I need to see it so that we can I can see it as the director of photography can see it. And I appreciated that attention to detail, because I work well like that, even though, I get nervous about things that are out of my comfort zone. And I really saw that come alive in you. Like you really, really love. And then at the shoot, it was like you were beaming. That was such a great thing to see. And you did such a wonderful job. And we'll talk more about it later and show it. But I mean, I'm so glad that you are going to be doing more of that, after this Dr. Elders documentary is finished and out to the public. So congrats to you on that. Music for you, that was something that you also did, was it later in your life that you kind of came into that? I mean, I know you've always loved music, but when you started singing, wasn't that something you did later? Can you kind of talk to me about how you got into that?
Sure. So, for me, I've always loved music, as you mentioned, but I also knew I wanted to be a doctor. So, growing up, I would sing from time to time. And if someone said to me, "Oh, you sing pretty," I'd say, "Oh, that's nice, but I'm going to be a doctor." And so, I went through, that whole process of medical school residency and got into practice and just realized I needed a hobby. And so I thought, oh my gosh, maybe I'll take music lessons. And I literally opened the local paper, and, I was in Tennessee at the time, and there was a man advertising voice lessons. And so, maybe this wasn't the best idea, but at that time I thought, he offered them in his home. So I drove to his house. So, I mean, I guess he could have been a serial killer, but I didn't even think about that. I just thought, I was like, oh, I just need a break. I need a hobby. And his name was Steve, and he was so encouraging. He had done, back in his time, he had done like cabaret shows and played at clubs and was just a super nice man. And so he said, I'm going to send you over to the theater to audition. He said, because you could sing and you should be doing that. And I just fell back in love. That childhood love of music became my, an adult love of music. And I was hooked then. And I did, musical theater. I started a band in Tennessee. And then my friend said, you should move to Austin. It's the live music capital. And so I thought, well, I'll move here and see, I might not be able to cut it here. And so I moved here back in 2006. And the first band that I auditioned with offered me their job. And so what they didn't tell me was that they'd previously had two singers who did split 40 songs a night. And I was one person singing 40 songs a night. And we usually played Friday, Saturdays, and sometimes Sundays. And so, but I'm telling you, Cecil, if you're out there, if you ever see this, I just want to say thank you, because you talk about, learning what it is to entertain a crowd, take care of your voice because you're doing that much singing. Like I did all that, and it was because of that experience. I mean, really, it was just sink or swim. So having said that, has been such an incredible journey to be here. I've gone to music school for a year, which was a lot of fun, met a lot of incredible people there. I've recorded albums. Of course, I'm doing the show in April. At Roberta Flack, but it's just been a joy. It's been an incredible journey, and not at all what I expected. And I came to it, I was, out of residency into practice, I would have been about 30.
You also have a podcast that you do about, in the medical field, right? About doctors and
Strong Women in Medicine. Yes.
And how can people find that? It's called Strong Women in Medicine, and what can they expect if they do find that online?
So, my goal with the Strong Women in Medicine podcast was to have women on sharing their stories, and not just providing, talking about medicine and talking about all their work, although that's important too. It's really to look at these women and who they are as people. So I'm hoping in that way that it, sort of connects and it resonates, particularly with women. I think sometimes we need that extra encouragement. And I love that the women that are on this podcast that come on are absolutely amazing, are very accomplished, but they're women. They have families, they do other things with their life than just work. And so I love that. And the reason, I started that podcast again, it felt like, another way to showcase women in medicine, like we're doing with the documentary. It felt like let's showcase as many women in medicine as possible, and talk about who they are. And so that's what I love about the podcast. And it's very conversational. It's not a lot of technical terms and things like that, because that's not the purpose. And if you really want to hear more about medicine and science by the way of studies and more technical aspects, my podcast is not for you. But if you want to hear great stories from amazing women and hear about their journeys in medicine, then this is the podcast you want to listen to. And I just actually completed a podcast before we got on for this interview. And so that was a lot of fun too, sort of last minute, but it was a lot of fun. And again, I love the opportunities that come to me by way of, one reason being staying open to the possibilities.
And that's great advice, staying open to the possibilities, because that's the only reason why I ended up on this show with you. So now coming full circle to the new intro that was shot for my new show, the Merino Show. Do you want to talk a little about before we show it, just like the process, because you were the director, you really got everything together, the whole process really, and then found the director of photography. I mean, you were the one who got this all together. So can you just talk a little about that process for you and what that was like?
Sure. And I mean, a lot of what you experienced was the benefit of my successes and failures. So, there's just been things, when I've done projects where I'm like, oh, this can never happen again, or this was really successful. And I think it's really important when you do a project, no matter the size, is to be organized and have, a timeline. And that was one thing for me. And I knew you like to have, structure, and you like to be aware of what was coming, what was happening now, what was coming next, which is totally great by me. But also it felt like very much a collaborative spirit. So it couldn't just be, and I've never been that way, it couldn't just be my ideal. We started out with some ideas and they evolved, and you said, I'm thinking more of this. And so for me, one thing that's important to listen to a client and hear what their vision is. I mean, I can improve upon it maybe, but you always want to be listening to what their needs are. And then in terms of the other work, because I did the producing part as well, but you put together the budget, you talk about the money, that's always important. Because, I could come up with a lot of things, but, we have to have our budget, we have our timeline, I'm at that point in this, film world where I know great film people. So, Marty was great. I've worked with him. He went to the cotton fields with me, he and Andy, who he works with. And they're amazing people. And then I've worked with him. He did an interview for me. I actually had an interview for the documentary. So he did my interview, which was cool. So we've worked together a few times now, and he's real easy to work with. Like, it's like a dream. Like, it's just not hard working with Marty. So I knew the people that I wanted to bring in. And then the casting wasn't that fun.
That was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yes.
Zoom interviews that you set up with, you put out a casting call, and we got two great young women. We got Marina and Cassidy who are in it.
Yes.
And that was fun for me. That was a lot of fun because I'd never been through like a casting call. And Sheila, who runs Awesome Music TV, was formerly a casting director, and she helped as well in that process. So that was a lot of fun. And what I have to say to you too about this process for me, which was where I learned, was I tend to be in, and you and I have talked about this, like, I'm like, okay, I move really fast. Like, we're going to shoot an intro. We got to do this. We got to do, and you're like, let it breathe. Think about, what you want to do. And then let that evolve. And I'm so glad that I listened to you, because out of that did come, wait a minute, I don't know that I want to do this part. The more I've been thinking about it, why don't we do this? It just seems better. And you were all on board for that. But I had to change the way I had to adjust to working in a collaborative in a different way, because I've always been kind of used to working on my own, and to have to collaborate and to work that way was a learning experience for me, I think. And I always have to take a breath, and people tell me that because I'm impatient and I just want to move. And there was like a beauty in just letting things breathe, because had I not done that, we would not ended up with the product that we ended up with.
It's true. Absolutely. And even when even in saying that, so it evolved before it got to the stage. Then when we were on the stage with the two women, it evolved further, and they had some ideals. And I just think it's important. I think people sometimes feel like, and I agree about sticking to your ideals. Like sometimes there's a time and place for everything. Sometimes there's not time for that there, and a decision needs to be made. But I find in the creative process, if you give things time, they get to where they need to be. You had a strong foundation when you came in, and you were open to the opportunities and the possibilities on that stage with those women. They brought something different, and it just ended up being a really fun intro. We had a good time filming it. And I'm really proud of it. And I hope you are too, and I really enjoy it. I felt like we met two people, that we would continue to stay in touch with and definitely would work with again.
Yeah. And as we talked at that shoot, I will be interviewing Marina and Cassidy on some upcoming shows, and Marty as well, if he wants.
Yes.
Good
luck with that. I mean, because I don't know that Marty can stay within a 30-minute time. You don't know Marty. I love Marty. You tell him I said that, and he'll be like, well, she's right. But yeah, I don't know that 30 minutes is enough to contain Marty, but you sure can try. I wish you the best.
Yeah, thank you. Well, with that being said, why don't we go ahead and premiere the intro? And again, Candice, I know we'll be seeing more of you, because I'm going to have you back on the show, my new show, at some point, especially wanting to talk about the documentary, the music that's coming up. So with that all being said, we'll go ahead and intro the beginning of the Marino show, and then the next show will be the Marino show. So we look forward to seeing everybody. Thank you. The Marino Show.